Brittany, it was just 3 years ago that you took a pretty fluke fall from a wall while you were helping to set the holds. And here you are, all of a sudden, I mean, you're already back at climbing. What is it about this sport that's drawn you back in?
I think climbing has always presented like a really cool challenge. Before my accident, it was a lot of problem solving, not just for your brain, but also for your body. And a lot of that hasn't changed. Obviously, I can't use all of my body to climb a route anymore, but there's still quite a bit of problem solving to be had when trying to like pull your body up a wall, especially with it being paralyzed, like trying to angle it and trying to figure out how to use the muscles that I do have. So that problem solving aspect is really kind of addicting. And I also just, I don't know, I like pain, I guess. So I like to do really hard sports and I like to try and challenge myself as much as I possibly can.
Well, you've certainly done that, and I was looking at the multitude of sports that you're involved in and have been involved in the past, and wow, I mean, you're definitely relentless. Prior to your injury, you did backpacking, spelunking, mountain biking, snowboarding, rock and ice climbing, and you were a certified rock climber. There must have been some true draw just within your blood and your spirit to want to be an outdoors person to the point where you actually got your advanced education in recreation and outdoors. So, is there was there just something that was a real calling to you when it came to being an outdoors person?
Yeah, for sure. Um, I think any sort of movement has always been something that has been really addicting to me. I grew up doing gymnastics and then transitioned into pole vaulting. And then when I found the outdoors, I realized just how much more I can move my body in the outdoors. It's not just moving, but it's also exploring and discovering these really beautiful places, both above and below ground. I mean, there's always something new to see.
It seems like you might, in some ways, be on the forefront of something with so many of these outdoor activities. And and I know that you're getting ready to go to an indoor climbing wall in Katy, Texas, in just a few weeks. So I want to jump a little bit into climbing so people get a grip of exactly what paraclimbing is all about. So when we talked, you sort of educated me and gave me a pretty good notion of what it was all about. First of all, hands climbing alone is called campus climbing, which is something I didn't know. So tell me what is it exactly about campus climbing that is, I mean, it's got to be a huge challenge. Of course, you climbed and you used your feet before, but now you're just using your arms. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in regular able bodied climbing, obviously, it can still be really physically demanding. But generally, you climb a little bit and you try and find opportunities for like good resting so that you can climb more. In campus climbing, generally you're not finding nearly as good of rest. Everything's hanging on the arms. I can't put my feet on anything to rest. So it's quite a bit more powerful and it's quite a bit faster. In a lot of ways, it's pretty similar to speed climbing where all of your effort goes into a quick, like 90-second burst of extreme power. And you just try and climb as many holds as you can before your body realizes that it's absolutely exhausted.
Right, and you're basically well, you're not basically, you're using your arms entirely. So I would have to assume that where the real strain is in your shoulders and your elbows, I mean, basically your entire arm. So what is it that gets exhausted first? Is it the shoulder, or do you is it overall the entire arm just from being hung that long, lack of blood flow, whatever it might be? What gets tired and what hurts?
Um, it kind of depends on the route. So usually for me, I get really tired in my shoulders and biceps pretty quickly. Unless it's a crimpy route. So if it's a crimpy route, the holds are like quite a bit smaller. Crimps usually refer to a hold that is like a finger pad width or smaller. And so that can get quite pumpy in your forearms, and sometimes those blow out way faster than your shoulders or your biceps.
Sure. So the wall that you'll be climbing in Katy will be either 40 or 50 feet high, and it seems to me from everything that I've learned that you have 6 minutes to maximize your climb. So it's not a speed ascent that gets you the win, it's how high you can get on the wall. So within that 6 minutes, how high do you anticipate that you would get on a 50-foot wall?
Um, I mean, the goal is always to get to the top. I still have quite a bit of training to do to make my endurance to the point where I can climb a full 50-foot wall. Um, so I'm hoping to get around 30 or 40 feet is the goal, but 50 is still a little out of reach these days. But in our category, we also compete, not at nationals, but in the World Cup stage, we also compete against the men, and most of the men can climb the full 50 feet.
Yeah, you were telling me about that also, and your category is considered AL1, and it's men and women combined because there just aren't really enough women to sustain their own category at this point. But what I learned was that because of the situation with the SEI and amputees, they combine you, and in many ways, I wonder and I know you do too, about the fairness of competing, with an SCI versus an amputee, less weight. They can hold on to the grips a little bit longer, just everything in general. Do you feel like there's still a long way to go in terms of getting a good foundation for how to gauge the sport and who can get to the top of the mountain or the wall?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of frustrating right now. I think everyone, especially in the AL1 category, recognizes that parasports in general are not always 100% fair. They're almost never going to be 100% fair. Every disability is very unique. In AL1 climbing, it becomes even more unfair a lot of times because we are competing not only women against men on the World Cups, but we're also competing against people that have vastly different disabilities than us. This past World Championship, we even had a male that could fully use his legs to climb. And so he wasn't missing his legs. He just had an incomplete spinal cord injury where he could still use his legs and he could still stand up on his legs. And that obviously caused some contention,
I
quite a
could see
few
that.
disagreements, but at this point, there's not really much we can do. We all would rather compete against people that have more ability than us than not be able to compete at all. And especially the women, we even fought to be able to compete against the men so that we didn't have to compete against people that are using their legs. So hopefully, as the sport continues to grow, these categories will be able to be split up even further. Eventually, hopefully, we have just a women's category and just a men's category. And then maybe from there, we can split it off even more that there's like the bilateral amputee category and the spinal cord injury category, or a hip a hip function category and a no hip function category. Um, I think something like that is coming. It is growing really, really quickly. Not as much on the women's side, unfortunately, but the sport itself is growing very, very rapidly. And so hopefully in the future, we can split it up and make it a little bit more fair.
As you mentioned that, I looked back and saw that I had no idea that the sport really had its grassroots all the way back in the early 2000s and had its first championship, I believe it was in Italy in 2003. And now here you are, 2026, we're just a couple of years away from LA 2028, which is a pretty big deal. It seems like paraclimbing has started to make enough of a mark that you're looking at starting its inception into the Paralympics in 2028.
Yes. Yeah. These last couple of years especially, the sport has seen, like, a huge spike in growth, and it doesn't seem to be losing momentum at all, and so it's pretty great that the Paralympic Committee has recognized that growth, and we are set to debut in LA 2028, which is pretty exciting for the sport. Unfortunately, not every category is going to be represented in LA, but we're hoping that if it has a good turnout in LA, that we'll be able to see it in future Paralympics as well.
So you have a lot of work to do over the course of the next 2 years, both personally and within the sport. The sport itself still really has to define those categories, and it's really not that much time. But for you personally, what's the kind of work that you'll have to put in to be a Paralympian?
So, first thing is just trying to make sure that people know about paraclimbing so that this debut in LA goes really well and that we have a lot of viewers, so that it can be in future Paralympics. My category will not be in LA 28. I would love to do everything I can to try and change that and make that happen, but it's pretty unlikely. So if I can do everything I can to ensure that it has the growth and it has the support that it needs so that it can be in future Paralympics, that's kind of first priority. And then also just staying healthy and training really hard so that I can be competitive. Um,
And sometimes that's easier said than done.
yeah.
Yeah, you were telling me already at 27 years old, you're starting to have some shoulder issues from the chronic reaching and pulling. So,
Yeah, shoulder injuries are always present on my mind.
yeah.
I do quite a bit of physical therapy and a lot of preventative strength training and physical therapy stuff just to try and avoid that as best I can. But especially with not having a whole lot of like core strength to kind of balance that out, it really can be quite a bit of stress on just a single arm. Um, so just lots of strength training, lots of additional cross training with different sports as well seem to balance it out pretty well.
Hey, Brittany, I want to go back to a couple of the specifics about the sport that you basically taught me about. So, with the holds, there are basically two types. You've got the finger pad size, that being the hold, and you have the jugs, which are a little bit larger. So, I would have to think that as you're climbing the wall, you're constantly seeking the jugs because that would be just an easier pull for you. Do they strategically place those on the walls to make it more difficult? I mean, are there more of the smaller pads versus the bigger pads? How do they go about setting a wall? And do you know in advance? Like, do you show up the morning of the event and find out how they've set the wall that day?
Yeah, so I did quite a bit of route setting as well as climbing before my injury. That's actually how I got injured was route setting, so I have a little bit of a sneak peek at how this process works. We actually have more than 2 hold types, so we have crimps that are like the single finger pad. Um, we have slopers, which is kind of like a smooth, rounded surface, and those don't really have any sort of like grippable ledge on it. Can't really cup your fingers around it. It's based off of just friction between your skin and the hold itself. Jugs means you can kind of wrap your fingers fully behind it. And then we also have pinches, so that's where you're just using like the compression between your fingers and your thumb to squeeze onto something. And we also have pockets, and those have like a little cutout in the hold where you might be able to fit like 2 or 3 fingers in it, and they can be quite small. And those are kind of like the main hold types. They all have different sizes within those different types. And it kind of just depends on what the route setters are trying to challenge. A lot of the route setters will actually follow the athletes on Instagram. They go to the different competitions and they try and keep track of where the progression within the athletes is happening. And they try and challenge the top athlete mostly. So usually the route will start out pretty easy. They want everyone to get onto the wall at least and get up
Sure.
2 feet. So it usually starts with jugs. They're placed a little closer together, keep it pretty simple in terms of the style of movement. And then the difficulty kind of ramps up from there. So harder holds, maybe bigger moves, uh, more difficult style of movements. You might have to like cross an arm over under your other arm. You might have to like try and rotate. Um, there are lots of different challenges that can be presented. When the AO1 category first started, it was mostly just what we call a jug ladder. So lots of really easy holds, placed pretty much right on top of each other, similar to climbing a ladder. And it's evolved quite a bit as time has gone on, and we have athletes that have been doing this for quite a while and have gotten crazy strong. And now we're seeing quite a few more crimps, quite a few more pockets, some more challenging styles of movement. And we also share the routes with the other disability categories. Even if we don't compete against them, we're often sharing a route with RP1 or AL2 or some of the other categories. So we're also faced with challenges that their disability might be getting challenged with.
Sure. So, one of the most difficult parts of the climb is called the crux. And I'm wondering at about what height do the crux usually get placed? The crux being maybe an area where, I mean, and you tell me, is this where maybe the shift from one part of the wall to the other is a little bit further, or they make the grips a little bit smaller, but it's a pivotal part where it seems to me that would be where the first real difficulty might start to come into play. Tell me about the crux on the wall and how high it would be and how difficult it is.
Yeah, so again, with the different levels of disability and like different climbers who have been doing it different types of years will usually set multiple cruxes on a route. So something that might be challenging for someone that's only been campusing for a year might be like 15 feet up the wall. They don't want it super low down because if you were to fall off the wall, they obviously don't want anyone to hit the ground. Um,
Like you did?
yeah. So different rope systems obviously are going to allow for a little bit of slack and falling because those ropes aren't pulling us up the wall. So some amount of fall is kind of inevitable in climbing. So generally the crux is not placed any lower than like 15 feet up the wall. Um, but they'll usually set multiple crux climbs because they want to create like good staggering among all the athletes. So someone that's been climbing for 6 years isn't going to be challenged by the same thing that someone who's been climbing for a year is going to be challenged on. So
So
there can be multiple different crux sections throughout the route, and it kind of just separates all the athletes so that we have clear designation between first, second, third, and so on.
all right, so Brittany, you have aspirations, not that you haven't been a go-getter enough, but you have aspirations also to participate in the Winter Paralympics as a Nordic
Yes.
skier.
Yeah.
So, how has the training been going there? Has that been a good positive cross train for you? And do you anticipate that you'll be able to, manage the two sports together to be able to coordinate from summer to winter?
Um, yeah, I mean, I hope that I can keep managing the training. It does become challenging because it usually does not present a lot of option for rest days, especially in the middle of the week. It's usually 4 or 5 days of pretty intense training, and then I might get a rest day. How I do it right now is, um, Mondays and Wednesdays, I usually do my ski training and my strength training, and then Tuesdays, Thursdays is just climbing specific training, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday is kind of planned out depending on the week and how my training is going that week on what is a rest day, what is a skiing day, and what's a climbing day.
Oftentimes, Brittany, people have people that they aspire to be like. I know that you had an opportunity to ski with Oksana Masters, who's won multiple gold as both a hand cyclist and as a Nordic skier. What was it like meeting her, and how did her mentorship push you forward?
Yeah, so I am actually part of another organization called Sisters in Sports, and Kendall and Oksana, who are both
Kendall Gretsch.
yes, they're both co-founders of this organization, and so I get quite a bit of mentorship from both of them, not only in just how to set myself up as a successful person outside of sport, but also within the sport itself, how I can try and build my platform, how I can reach out to sponsors and develop training plans and nutrition plans and have better mental health training as well as physical health training. Um, they've both been very, very friendly and very, very helpful throughout the whole process. And I'm excited to work with them even more in the future and just continue to glean all the information and help that I can from them.
Brittany, you're only 3 years into, your spinal cord injury, but you're doing a lot of really good things, and I'm just kinda curious, I'm gonna pitch this out there and you tell me,
Okay.
sports means what to you?
Oh, it means everything. Um, Sports is kind of what gave me some sort of direction after my spinal cord injury. Movement has always been really important, and so I wanted to get back to that in any way that I could right after. It gave me a purpose, it gave me hope, it gave me new dreams and goals to work towards, and so it really is everything. I don't know what I would do without sports. I think I'd be much less happy and much less motivated to keep going without it, and so being able to have something that I can focus on not only every day in the short term, but also have long-term hopes and dreams and things to look forward to. I'm always excited to try new sports as well. I mean, I'm pretty dedicated to the ones I'm doing, but I'm always open to trying even more of them, and I would love to even push the boundaries and try things that haven't really seen a whole lot of, like, wheelchair athletes before. I want to get more into outdoor climbing again, including ice climbing. I don't know how that's going to look, but I'm excited to see if it is even a possibility, so
Well, Brittany, you sound pretty motivated, and I really, I appreciate everything you've had to say because you really stand for moving towards the future and not looking behind. So, keep up the good work. I know for sure we're going to see you in those Paralympic Games, and just keep doing your thing. You've got a good spirit. Thanks for coming in.
thank you.